moved back, but Wu Meiling also moved her anxiety into the brigade. This anxiety is the haunt. A few days ago, because of living in earthquake tents, everyone's life was not that delicate. They liked to sit together to chat when they had nothing to do, and it was inevitable to talk about ghosts in the dark night. This is also the tradition of the farmers. It is good to chat about ghosts while enjoying the cool air. They accidentally turned out the haunting of the brigade. Guang Li should not be blamed for this. It was Wu Meiling herself who brought it up. Wu Meiling said, Guang Li, that day you said that the brigade was haunted, but you were hesitant. Is it true or false? Guang Li said, Of course it is true. Wu Meiling said, Talk about it. Guang Li said, Are you afraid? Wu Meiling smiled and said, I am a materialist. I don't believe in ghosts. I am not afraid of ghosts. Talk about it. Actually, talking about this, Guang Li's hinted Guang Li. Unfortunately, it was at night, and Guang Li didn't see it, and the chatterbox opened at once. The haunted thing is a long story, but it's still before liberation. At that time, there was no brigade. It was a temple of the earth god. How could it be haunted? A person was killed in front of the temple of the earth god, Wang Erhu, a newborn rich in Wang village. How much money does Wang Erhu have? Let's put it this way. You will know after a visit to the barefoot doctor Wang Xinglong's house that the 3 large tile-roofed houses were left by Wang Erhu. Wang Erhu, how to talk about him? He's not bad, but he's too rich, too active, and too bold. So he dares to do any business. When the Japanese came, he did not shy away, but even hooked up with the Korean guys. In 1945, the Japanese surrendered. Although the Japanese left, the battle must continue. To mobilize the enthusiasm of the poor, what to do? To fight the local tyrants and divide the fields. Land reformed. Once the land reformed, Wang Erhu broke down, and the traitor removal team got a secret report that Wang Erhu was actually a traitor. That night, the team put Wang Erhu in the bed, stuffed a rag in his mouth, tied him tight, and pulled him to the gate of the temple of the earth god. Once he was there, he was caught. Wang Erhu's head rolled 4 or 5 times on the ground and was finally blocked by a brick. He was frowning and smacking his lips. Later, it was said that Wang Erhu was wronged. In fact, he, the traitor, only sold 200 pounds of rice to the Japanese. Because of injustice, he becomes a ghost. This ghost is special, with only a head but no body. On the night of thunderstorms, as long as the lightning flashes in the sky, the ghost thinks it's a guillotine and comes out. Just a head and a face, hanging in the air, floating in the wind. As soon as it sees a person, it will stare at you and ask, Where is my body? Many old people have seen it, but you can tell him the truth. You should say, Eaten by the dogs! Wang Erhu would leave. Wu Meiling moved back to the brigade headquarters. At night, she always thinks of Wang Erhu, and a lonely head flows in. Yes, Wu Meiling is a materialist and does not believe in ghosts. However, Wu Meiling obviously ignored such a basic fact that materialism can only have its explosive power under the sun. Every night, when the matter is swallowed up by the darkness, materialism becomes the color of the night, like a soul, not like a thing. The brigade was huge, and this huge black void would envelope Wu Meiling strongly and effectively, like her skin. This time, Wu Meiling's fear was attached to her skin, full of gloomy atmosphere, very abstract. But gloom is such a thing. The more abstract it is, the more concrete it becomes. Sometimes it could be specific to Wang Erhu's expression, his frown and his smacking. Worse, the brigade had been a temporary warehouse to store food, and the corners of the walls were almost all surrounded by mouse holes. It can be said that the continuous mouse holes support the solid foundation of the brigade. At night, the mice come out with a solemn expression and a dignified atmosphere. They come together first in meetings, then in small meetings, and then in breakout groups. The discussion was public and secret, chattering and vigorous. They quarrel, loot, hoard, grind their teeth, fight, and incidentally engage in hectic sexual activity and yelling. It's almost a haunted sound. Wu Manling was extremely frightened, but she couldn't say anything. How can a materialist say that she is afraid of being haunted? Wu Manling bought a flashlight and placed it beside the pillow. Before going to bed every day, she pulls the microphone of the Twitter to the bed. In case of any trouble, Wu Manling will immediately turn on her flashlight, turn on the switch of the Twitter at the same time, and shout loudly into the microphone, "Eaten by dogs!" On the days of the earthquake, Demon stayed in the room all the time without building an earthquake tent, mainly because of laziness. Demon was really good. On such a hot day, he could stay in his room, sitting here, laying there, staring with his pair of big dull eyes, and no one knew what he was thinking. When it was time to eat, he took some rice and some potatoes, added water, boiled them, then added salt and swallowed the potato rice. There were so many things to do every day. This person is really lazy, with a full body of lazy flesh, a full body of lazy tenders, and a full body of lazy bones. In fact, Demon was not like this before. When he first came to Wang village, Demon was a neat and lively young man, active, hardworking, and cheerful. When he was free, Demon would go to the playground of Wang Village Elementary School to play basketball. He was as agile on the basketball court as he was at the farm work. The only difference was that he was more handsome when he played basketball. His dribbling, passing, long shots, and three-step baskets were all precise and powerful, and at the same time stretched and generous. He was the core of offense and defense. People must still remember that back then, many people watched the Demon play basketball with their bowls in their hands, and they wowed and applauded him. However, day after day, month after month, that is, a year or two, the young man was weakened, and his foxtail was exposed. He was a fake motivator. Demon did not become like this in one morning. There was a gradual process here, which was very long. In general, after a long period of quantitative change, there was a qualitative change. What is the old saying? The horse's powers are known over long ways, and people's hearts are seen over long days. Not false at all. As time went on, he, a lively fool, finally turned into the laziest donkey, slowly at everything and only knowing how to mess around. The members of the community have sharp eyes and gave him a very disreputable nickname, the Demon of the World. Judging from the current situation, Demon is not even comparable to a donkey. He is simply a turtle. He hides in the turtle's shell all day long, and even his head is shrunk in. The shrinking turtle is him. Speaking of him, Demon doesn't have any major problems. He doesn't smoke or drink. He doesn't steal. He doesn't flirt. He doesn't have any serious style problems, and his family background is not bad. He's just being lazy and messy and doing everything by slowing down several beats. His hair is quite long and his speech is sloppy. It takes him a long time to say a word. His words do not attach to anything. He also walks slowly, and his heels kick and kick as if the two heels are caught by a ghost. This man is slow to even blink. He blinks hard, and you can see him closing his eyes listlessly, pausing for a while, then opening listlessly. This is very bad. It's like looking down on people. The worst thing is his laugh. His laugh is very characteristic. Others laugh crunchily, raise their necks, ha 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 a few times, and they're done. As for him, hushes, and he doesn't even make a sound. He just hangs a smile on his face so silently, and his chest twitches. The topic has shifted to other places. Let's take a look at Demon. His smile is still crooked at the corner of his mouth, hanging there. Because the time is too long, it is no longer a laugh, and it has a meaning of suspicion out of nowhere, and even sarcasm and irony. It is easy to make people worry, and they always feel that they owe him something. In short, when his flesh laughs, his skin doesn't, and when his skin laughs, his flesh doesn't. Very evil, and he looks like he doesn't buy it and wants to fight against someone. What people in Wang village dislike most is the evil of this kind of person, which hides a great scheming all day long. Who are you for? Who is sorry for you? Who has wronged you? Not at all. Such a person should never expect others to treat him well. Leaving half a sentence in the speech, strangeness, slowness, and dying are all fatal problems. Demon has all of these faults, especially when compared with Wu Manling. It is obvious and extraordinarily eye-catching. You say, how can the poor low and middle farmers like him? The people of Wang village don't like Demon. He knows that too. As a result, his mass base goes wrong and becomes very weak. If not communicating, then don't communicate. Bored, what should he do? Play the harmonica. Every day, the two corners of his mouth are ground into cocoons by the harmonica. Why do you put a broken hornet's nest in your mouth all day long? It's neither sweet nor salty. The person Demon is less smart. The people in Wang village actually know that there is a very important reason why Demon is so down. Laziness is only half, and the other half is jealousy. The educated youth left one by one. Those who should go to college went to college. Those who should return to the city returned to the city. Those who should retire from illness retired. And those who should enter the factories entered the factories. But he could not leave. Demon saw it in his eyes and secretly compared himself with others. He was completely disappointed by the comparison. Is this comparable? What does the old saying say? Tanks cannot compare with basins, and people cannot compare with people. If people compare with people, people should be mad. If can't go, don't go. But Demon doesn't think so. He couldn't accept, so he adopted an almost rotten way of fighting, breaking the broken jar. Then you do it. Wang village is a vast world. It's such a big place afraid that you break a broken jar. Who are you scaring? Everyone in the world knows a simple truth. The more the jar is broken, the less you can break it. Once you break it, it will be more completely broken, and it will be scattered all over the ground. When you want to pick it up again, you will not be able to make up a whole. Either a corner is missing here, or a side is missing there. Demon just doesn't understand this. Even if eating a potato, you don't even know where to peel it, and you would rather break it, looking for death. Demon just felt at loss. It didn't matter that he couldn't leave. The most important thing was that compared with others, he had not suffered less. When he just arrived at Wang village, Demon could be said to have made bloody efforts. How come was that called work? It was simply desperate. Why? Just to get a performance. The educated youth had standards for performance, which was to see who was more desperate and who took their own body and bones as nothing. Whoever dared to waste it and who dared to rectify it to death was considered to have performance. During that time, Demon suffered a lot. What does the slogan say? If you want to ask tired or not, think about the old revolutionary seniors. If you want to ask suffering or not, think about the Red Army's 25,000 li. The seniors and the 25,000 li is simple, a ruler and a limit without limit. This limit is not empty, as there's a poem to prove it. Make up your mind. Don't be afraid of sacrifice. Overcome all difficulties and strive for victory. What does it mean to be not afraid of sacrifice? Only by living can one not be afraid of sacrifice. On the other hand, as long as you still have a breath, you're not called not afraid of sacrifice. You have room to work hard and improve. Demons not afraid of sacrifice could be described as tragic. In a little more than 2 years, his stomach was broken, and his joints were also broken. Demon was so hard-working and was in the limelight, but he couldn't hide it from Wu Manling. There was one thing that Wu Manling saw very accurately. Demon was so active that his motives were unhealthy, and many fatal problems were hidden. As a descendant of a small shop clerk, Demon had a strong speculative mentality, and what he was really obsessed with was a one-shot deal. In other words, he worked so hard to leave earlier. This was his innate true nature. His positivity was false, his enthusiasm was false, and his desperation was false. These were all just an appearance, but speculation in disguised form was real. He was still greedy in his bones to make enough money in the shortest possible time. Wu Manling pointed this out mercilessly at the live meeting of the Educated Youth League branch. Wu Manling also pointed out that Demon's motives in basketball were also problematic. It was not for exercising, but to show off. The basket was empty. Why didn't you shoot immediately, but wait for the defender to come up before you shot? Wu Manling's words came to the point. Later facts also proved this. When Demon lost his chance to go to college, he suddenly degenerated from his initial rashness to escape and negativity. The so-called stomach problems and so-called arthritis were both excuses. Who doesn't have stomach problems? Who doesn't have arthritis? Sicknesses are outside of spirits, outside of the revolution. After all, sickness is shameful. It is a shield of weakness and uselessness. Sluggishness and laziness are diseases. Bad motivation is an incurable disease of an educated youth. By 1976, all the educated youth in Wang village had gone, and there were only 2 people left, Wu Manling and Demon. It needed to be emphasized here that they both stayed, but there was a superior in meaning. Demon couldn't leave, but Wu Manling didn't want to leave. It couldn't be confused. It stood to reason that a man and a woman, young and fellow homies, should be extra sympathetic. You helped me, I would help you. However, no, the faces got along, but the hearts didn't. Of course, Demon was not a freaking thing. As soon as Wu Manling became the party secretary of the village, the relationship between the two deteriorated sharply, like aggressive eyes, and it developed to the point that they didn't talk even when they hid their noses. Saying back here, little Wu was not picky. She gave use a little to everyone, but she did not give any inch of land to this educated youth homie. Talking in detail, Wu Manling became the party secretary of the village, and although Demon was jealous, he was quite happy in private. He saw hope. Demon secretly made a calculation for himself. First, a certain chance would be there next time. Since Wu Manling was already the party secretary of the village, she was the core strength of one village. Naturally, she shouldn't leave. And the rest, except for himself, there won't be a second. Second, Demon failed a few times before, and the problem laid in the mass base. But that was just a pretty excuse, and the root was still in the branch. Now Wu Manling was the party secretary. No matter how, she was my own person after all, and she would definitely do the favor. Therefore, on the whole, the situation of Demon was that the advantages outweighed the disadvantages, and it was developing in a better and better direction. Opportunities came. Soon after Wu Manling became the branch secretary, the brick and tile factory of Zhongbao Commune in Xinhua County was recruiting workers. Demon made a formal request in writing, and he wanted to go to the commune's brick factory to be a worker. Wu Manling stopped him and did not sign. Disagree. Wu Manling was a straightforward person. She didn't make any excuses and went straight that she didn't agree. She said at the branch meeting, the crux of the question is, does Demon know what a brick is? What is a tile? A person, even if he doesn't want to be a brick or a tile, what else can you expect him to do? Wu Manling said, bricks and tiles, in the final analysis, were still mud. However, they were different from ordinary mud. Bricks and tiles were well regulated and square-shaped soil, which had been tested by fire. For Demon, what he needed most was to walk away from the mold and roll out of the fire. What he needed most was not to become bricks and tiles, but to be soil. This was a foundation. This strike was fatal to Demon. That was to say, not only was he not qualified to be a brick or a tile, but he was not even qualified to be a piece of soil. The previous efforts were in vain. Demon finally saw the most basic fact, that he would not be able to live in this lifetime. Compared with others, being trampled under the feet of his own people was the worst. What did it mean to step on own people and make shit on both ends? That was it. Demon understood at once that Wu Manling was unwilling to let him go. He must live in one village as a foil for Wu Manling. If there was no Demon's 1 foot taller, how could Wu Manling have her 1 yard taller? Not afraid of not knowing the goods, just afraid of comparing the goods. This comparison brought out Wu Manling's 1,000 times of excellence. Wu Manling was such a clever person. How could she be willing to let him go? She wouldn't. Just stayed. Demon gave up and was at ease. Couldn't go to the commune to be a brick, a tile. Couldn't I be a piece of grass in one village? Being grass was good. Being grass was so good. Wildfire couldn't burn me up. I would be alive again in spring. Even drinking the gusting wind could make a large piece of green. Thinking about it like this, Demon was happy, understood, and thought to himself, "Fuck you, Grandma. I can't go. Can't you go either? Let both of us spend it. You sell fresh fish. I sell salted fish. I want to see if your fresh fish can stand the time, or if my salted fish can." Tuanfang was a headless fly, unable to find anyone to speak to. At noon, he still rushed to the cooperative medical care site, but caught empty. The door to the cooperative medical care was locked. Then went to Demon and said, only to sit there. Demon was still the same, laying on the ground with his head resting on his arms, his cuff on his thigh, his eyes closed, and he focused on playing his harmonica. In fact, Demon was like this every day. Dunfang looked at the harmonica of Demon and thought to himself, it would be good if Sanya were a harmonica. Putting her in his hand, kissed her as he wanted. Just thinking about it, Demon threw his harmonica on the straw mat, still closed his eyes, and said, Dunfang, know what I'm thinking? Before Dunfang could answer, Demon had already sat up and opened his eyes, mouth crooked, and smiled by himself. Demon said, I just want to walk back to Nanjing, take a sip of soda, and then walk back. Even if I walk for 8 days and 8 nights, it's worth taking a sip of soda. Demon nodded and repeated what he just said. Once again, he turned his face and said to Dunfang, Dunfang, if you can give me a drink of soda, I'd rather crawl under your crotch. Demon was joking with the meaning of looking for something to talk to, and joked with Dunfang. Did Dunfang know what soda is? How could he know the taste of the soda in his mouth with thousands of arrows? Played the piano to the cow. But Demon sat upright and stretched out a finger. He intended to give Dunfang a good talk about soda and the subtle and moving difference between Shanghai soda and Nanjing soda. Dunfang stretched out his hand and pressed down the arm of Demon together with his finger. Dunfang said, I'll give you a bottle of soda, and you give me the harmonica. Demon laughed. It was the kind of laugh that was out loud, which was rare. The laughter of Demon echoed in the warehouse. Demon handed the harmonica in his hand to Dunfang's and said, Go get a soda. Dunfang put down the harmonica with a serious expression. He stood up. Demon lay down, closed his eyes again, started humming, and tapped with his pointing toes. Demon said, If you can let me drink soda, I will cut off my tongue and give it to you. Dunfang sat at the door. I have the tongue myself. Xinglong's home is really magnificent, not only in Wang village, but even if it expanded to a radius of dozens of miles, it can also be called the most famous building. Although it is old, the atmosphere is still there. Bricks are bricks, tiles are tiles. Between bricks and bricks, there are neat outlines, not a single trace of scribbles. Blue and black, tall and majestic, is a strict style. Comparing the surrounding low-grass houses, it can be described as magnificent, with the suddenness of rising from the ground or falling from the sky. Speaking of the 3-tile-roofed houses of Xinglong's house, it is impossible not to mention Xinglong's father, Old Harpoon. Old Harpoon can be said to be a top figure in Wang village. If you count them carefully, there are 2 activists in Wang village. One is Quack Zu and the other is Old Harpoon. After all, Quack Zu is a sloppy woman. Her kung fu is limited to her lips. Her thunder is loud, but her rain is small. There are 3 feet of waves without wind and rainy with a little wind. With the element of an actor, she's an ugly actress on the stage. She could only amuse people. Old Harpoon is different. Old Harpoon is fierce and has the power of the mainstay. No matter what happens, he doesn't say a word, but is able to rush to the front. This is the role of example and demonstration. However, this example is arrogant. If he can't argue with his mouth, he moves his hand. If he can't beat others with his hands, he uses a stick. If he can't beat with a stick, he uses a knife. Therefore, this role model is incomparably sturdy and aggressive, domineering and hard-earned. And his positivity is not on a whim or reluctant. His activism has a very complete and clear context. Land reform, campaign to suppress counter-revolutionaries, unified purchases and sales, mutual aid groups, primary communes, advanced communes, people's communes, for cleanups movement, and a cultural revolution. He has been in front of everyone, standing on the top of every wave. Therefore, after the land reform, the anti-Japanese democratic government of the liberated areas awarded Wang Erhu's 3 large tile-roofed houses to Old Haporn. So their vision was very accurate. Since the land reform, Old Haporn has lived in the large tile house. He was encouraged and became more active. Old Haporn has not been a village cadre for a day. However, no one can deny that Old Haporn is always special. He was, is, and will always be the highest member of Wang village. Dunfang came to the door of Xinglong's house, and he wanted to ask Xinglong for a bottle of soda. Xinglong would give him this face. Of course, Dunfang would never tell Demon about the secret that Xinglong could make soda, and this secret must be kept. In the scorching sun, the door of Xinglong's house was closed, just like the cooperative medical care. Dunfang turned his head to the side and listened for a while, but there was no movement on the patio. Dunfang gave it a push, but didn't push it open. This was strange. In broad daylight, what were they doing with the door fastened? Dunfang stretched out his hand and slapped hard on the big iron ring on the door. When Wang Erhu built these 3 large tiled houses, he was really sophisticated, and you could feel it from the big iron ring on the door panel. In addition to the neat semi-spherical nails on the gate of Xinglong's house is so domineering, with a fearless look. Xinglong showed half of his head from the middle of the door, and the expression on his face looked quite serious. There seemed to be something urgent going on at home. Dunfang was an aware person. If it were the usual routine, Dunfang might not go in. However, Dunfang's thoughts were all on the harmonica, so he leaned on his side and squeezed in. After passing the patio and entering the main room, Dunfang realized that he had made a fool of himself. Something big really happened to Xinglong's family. The hall was full of people with their heads down. 2 sticks of incense were lit on the stage, and the room was full of smoke. It could be smelled that the paper money had just been burned. It's like having done a ritual in a hurry. Dunfang had already come in, so he could only laugh and nod to Xinglong's mother, brother, and sister-in-law as a greeting. Dunfang noticed that Xinglong's father, Old Haporn, was laying in bed. His head was covered with bandages, and his nostrils were full of rough air. Dunfang asked in a low voice, "What's the matter?" Xinglong pulled Dunfang aside, did not speak, but tilted his mouth to the roof beam. Dunfang raised his head and saw half a hemp rope hanging from the roof beam. The other half was placed on the platform and tied up with a red hairband. Dunfang looked at Old Haporn, the beam, the hemp rope, and the platform, so he understood. Old Haporn wanted to die. He hanged himself, but was cut from the roof beam and broke his head. Dunfang sucked in a breath and made a hiss, wondering, why did Old Haporn hang himself? This was incredible. Hanging was a woman's business. Only the most useless resentful women were bullied and couldn't find a place to reason, so they hung themselves on the branches, let the wind blow the corners of their clothes, let their hair spread all over their faces, and let the helpless 3-inch golden lotuses shake in the air. If a fiery person like Old Haporn was dead, besides life-ending, he could only die on the mountains of knives or in the sea of fire. He couldn't die on the roof beam. Who was he bullied by? In one village, only the senior member Old Hapoorn could bully others. Who has the courage to bully Old Hapoorn? There was no such statement. Impossible. How could it be? Duanfang couldn't believe it and whispered, Who knows? It's already the second time. Xinglong said worriedly, Why? For no reason. The old man has never been so soft. Ask him. I asked. Xinglong said he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. Xinglong frowned, raised his head, and said, You can't pry his mouth anyway. Duanfang said, That's also true. Old Hapoorn was laying on the bed, breathing heavily in and out. It looked like there would be no problem with life. Xinglong suddenly remembered and asked, Are you looking for me for something? Duanfang said, How come? It's fine. I wanted to talk to you, but I came over because you weren't there. The room was very hot and crowded. Duanfang felt that he was being on the way. Such a big thing happened in their family, and he was an outsider, so it was not good to be stuck there. Duanfang followed the other, nodded to the people in the room, and said goodbye. Xinglong kept sending him to the door of the patio and said, Duanfang, then don't talk about this outside. Duanfang patted Xinglong on the shoulder, closed the door for Xinglong, and heard Xinglong bolted. Duanfang did not go back from the original road, but took a short detour. The main reason was to avoid Demon. There was no problem with a bottle of soda, but meeting him now would be embarrassing. Unexpectedly, this detour in turn caused the trouble. At the entrance of the long and narrow alley, Duanfang saw a person walking across towards him. It was Sanya's mother, Kong Suzhen. Duanfang wanted to avoid her, but it was too late, so he could only bite the bullet and go up. Duanfang thought that she might not know. In fact, Kong Suzhen also saw Duanfang, which was quite awkward and difficult to handle. The main thing was that she couldn't say anything. If couldn't say anything, then didn't, and he pretended couldn't see her. It was still quite awkward. The alley was really too narrow. With their own thoughts, the two of them got closer and closer in the narrow and long alley. On the contrary, Kong Suzhen made up her mind. She was an elder after all, so it was reasonable not to speak. Just went all the way. What could she say to Duanfang? Kong Suzhen didn't look aside, but her face was already flushed red. The distance between the two people was only 4 or 5 steps away, but Duanfang stopped and said, Auntie. This auntie was polite, but it was also weird, especially abrupt, and it shocked Kong Suzhen. At Kong Suzhen's age, it was more than enough to be Duanfang's auntie, but as her identity, she dared not. This call also startled Duanfang himself. Duanfang had never greeted anyone with such an affectionate tone, let alone Kong Suzhen. He just blurted out. After he said it, he listened to it again, and it had the meaning of flattery, and it meant thinking about her daughter. His heart was getting more and more awkward. Kong Suzhen was older after all. She also stood still, calmed down, and said politely, It's Duanfang. Kong Suzhen thought, God damn it, you slept with my good daughter and took advantage of her all the way to the sky. You look innocent and are still hanging out here on such a hot day. Thinking of the grimaces that her daughter had suffered these days, Kong Suzhen even thought of slapping him. But Duanfang, the child, respected her by calling her auntie, and he was polite. Kong Suzhen looked around, and no one was there. She wanted to tell Duanfang a few words, harsh and warning ones. Don't provoke my Sanya again, otherwise I will be very rude. Kong Suzhen thought for a while, but couldn't think of any harsh words. Even if there were, she couldn't say them. Kong Suzhen stretched out her arm unexpectedly, put it on Dunfang's shoulder and said earnestly, "Dunfang, please." This sentence was vague, but the meaning was clear. Dunfang, you should have less contact with Sanya. It seemed that Kong Suzhen knew. Dunfang was ashamed for a while. Thinking of the crazy things he and Sanya had, Dunfang's face suddenly turned into a pig's liver, and he couldn't help lowering his head. But Dunfang immediately saw the other side of the problem from Kong Suzhen's tone. The one who was afraid was Kong Suzhen, not himself of what happened between him and Sanya being exposed. It seemed that. Otherwise, why was she so polite? Why was she acting so lowly? Thinking of this, Dunfang couldn't be ashamed, but he saw the bottom line in his heart, and suddenly there was a sense of boldness in his heart. I just want to be with her. What would you do? Silently, it was actually bullying her. Dunfang was also vague and replied very filially, "Got it." Dunfang's depressed mood suddenly brightened a lot, and even his steps were strong. Kong Suzhen knew, then let her know. She couldn't do anything to me. When he got home, he didn't expect a guest at home. Everyone was very happy except his mother, Shen Cuizhen, who was not pleasant, and the smile on her face was a little reluctant. Jia Chungan, Hongfen's fiancé, came to the door and was eating tea. The so-called eating tea, in fact, has nothing to do with tea, but boiled eggs with brown sugar. This is a custom handed down from Wang village. Although Wang village is poor, it is very customary to eat tea. An ordinary guest can eat it. It is precisely because of poverty that eating tea has naturally become the highest courtesy of welcoming guests, which is a huge feat. There are also some small but strict specifications here, mainly reflected in the amount of eggs. If it is the most precious guest, 7 eggs. A little more precious, 5. As for the ordinary one, it cannot be less than 3 at least. Otherwise, it cannot be called eating tea. This reflects the courtesy of the host, and this specification is not only reflected on the host's side, but also on the guest's side. That is, the eat of the guest. You can't eat all the eggs in a bowl. You have to leave 2 in the bowl to show that you can't eat it. That is very polite and shows that the host's welcome is a lot. It stands to reason that a fiancé does not meet the standard of eating tea. You're here to flatter your mother-in-law. How come you eat tea? However, Hongfen is going to get married at the end of the year, and the fiancé is about to turn formal and become an official son-in-law. Therefore, as soon as Jia Chungan put down the gift, Shen Cuizhen ordered Hongfen to boil tea. Under such circumstances, giving Jia Chungan a face is actually giving Hongfen a face. Look at how Hongfen did. She smashed 7 eggs into the pot all of a sudden. Shen Cuizhen saw it in her eyes, with a smile on her face, and cursed in her heart. You dumb thing, and you don't know the importance of anything you do. Chungan will be your man in the future, not your ancestor. Why do you put 7 eggs? Because the eggs are not laid by you, are they? Bitchy as soon as lifting your ass. Fortunately, Chungan was a polite guy. He drank a lot of soup. He only ate 1 egg, and there were 6 left in the bowl. Shen Cuizhen persuaded enthusiastically. Eat, eat. Chungan took out 3 bowls and gave 2 to Nat and 2 to Duanzheng. Duanzheng and Nat had obviously waited for a long time, and now they were satisfied and walked into the kitchen with their bowls in their hands. Chungan originally planned to leave the last 2 eggs to Shen Cuizhen, but Hongfen had already brought them. This was what made Shen Cuizhen the angriest. You should have waited for Chungan to bring the bowl over, and I, Shen Cuizhen, would naturally pass it to you Hongfen's hand. Although it was fake, how harmonious would it look? You are good, and you are not afraid of his laughing. Eat slowly, don't choke, and beat 7 eggs. This home is not yours anyway. You waste it as you wish. Chungan and Dunfang hadn't seen each other for 2 years. As soon as he entered the door, Chungan was shocked. In his memory, Dunfang was yet a skinny boy. In a blink, he had become like this. He was thick and strong, and he was completely a big man. Dunfang and Chungan nodded to each other and smiled as greetings. Chungan took a bench, sat shoulder to shoulder with Dunfang, took out a cigarette, served it, and lit it for Dunfang. But don't underestimate this little detail. It embodied the shrewdness of Chungan. Chungan's pair of small eyes were beyond clever. As soon as Dunfang entered the door, Chungan realized that the family had completed the change of dynasty. Wang Cunliang had already softened, and Dunfang was more like the owner of this family. The expression and tone of his speech were there. It stands to reason that Dunfang calls him brother-in-law in the future. He will be more honorable in front of Dunfang. However, Chungan knows that as long as Hongfen marries, he will be the uncle. On the bright side, uncle is the biggest, so wherever placed, he is the most honored. Another point, the most important thing as uncle, when the day Hongfen gets married, Dunfang will be up to pinch the lock. What is pinch the lock? Simply put, it is a local custom. At the last moment when the bride leaves her family's home, a lock should be hung on the box and left open. When the groom breaks all the obstacles, the uncle will stand up and pinch the lock. This pinch is the last pass, and the bride is yours. Otherwise, the bridegroom's stick will inevitably have to blast the empty cannon that night. Dunfang is a key figure. Thinking of this, Chungan pinched Dunfang's arm and said nervously, as if frightened, "You're so strong!" Dunfang said, "How so?"